The scene was dead anyway. A music scene lives, a music scene dies. The stories, however, are immortal. The scene was dead anyway is a look into the lives, communities, and music scenes that helped shape an entire generation. Hello and welcome to The Scene Was Dead Anyway. I'm your host, Rick Walland. I just want to start by saying thank you for listening, thank you for watching. This is now episode number 10 of my new podcast series, and I would say it's been a positive experience overall so far. I've had some good feedback and I'm enjoying the interviews. I'm really enjoying doing the research on all the guests, and honestly I've been out of touch from the music scene for quite a while, so I feel like I'm sort of refreshing a lot of the bands that are around at the moment, local bands in Manchester, and new promoters that are coming up on the scene. And obviously with the pandemic at the moment, it's difficult to kind of obviously put any gigs on. It's the first podcast series that I've set up, and there's parts of it that have been difficult, learning how to use different software like open broadcaster software to do the actual recordings, and using the video editing software after the recordings to clean them up. And some of the programs I use are very laggy, and also separating the audio channels, so I've got separate files, separate audio files for each microphone, so that I can get the best possible quality recordings to submit. But I would say overall, my experience has been very positive, and as I say, I've had some really good feedback, and I've really enjoyed just spending time with different people, some old friends that I haven't really seen in a while or spoke to in a while. It's been really good, and learned a lot of new things about people that I didn't know. So in that sense, it's been a good way to connect with people. Obviously during these times it's very difficult, because in this country, in the UK, we're still in a national lockdown, so we can't really hang out, we can't really see our friends. So it's another way to kind of help myself kind of get through this period, and also to produce something for other people to listen to and to watch, and hopefully be inspired by it, and take something away from it. I would like to announce that I've officially released my brand artwork logo, and now you can find that across all my social media platforms: facebook.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway, instagram.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway, twitter.com/TSWDA, and I'm also on patreon.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway. I just want to give a shout out to Neil Warburton, who designed my logo. He's an amazing graphic designer based in Wigan also. You can find him at IamUnknown.com. That's IamUnknown.com. This is episode number 10, and today I'm joined by Brandom Smith, a DIY music promoter based in Manchester, operating under the name Singing Box Promotions. Brandon's put on bands like Cocaine Piss, Locean, Shit Lips. Before we start, could I ask that you like and subscribe to my channel so that I can continue to grow the podcast and keep the show going. Just a quick disclaimer, there was some issues with the connection, so the audio does kind of pop in and pop out at times. I did my best to try and rectify that in the post-editing, but I wasn't able to completely eradicate that, so I do apologise in advance. Welcome to the show, Brandom Smith, Singing Box Promotions. How's it going?
Yeah, good man. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I guess you could just tell me a bit about yourself. What do you do, and what kind of bands you put on, and what kind of music inspires you? Just a little.
Well, I started doing this around 5 years ago off my own back. I guess it was the 5-year anniversary of the first show I ever put on recently, which was in November 2015. To be honest, it's quite a wide variety of stuff that I book. it just depends on anything interesting that mates of mine are doing or people who get in touch with me. But it varies really. A lot of the time it's kind of along the line of sort of like post-punk and like noise and indie rock bands. But I definitely booked a lot of stuff that's more, kind of like left field, experimental improv, noise orientated stuff. Some electronic stuff, singer-songwriter act as well. I've definitely never limited myself to hosting one genre or specific style of music because I have a very broad taste, obviously, and I like to reflect that in what I do.
Cool. So, Brandon, you grew up in Wythenshawe, South Manchester.
Yeah, that's right.
How was that? What kind of stuff did you listen to early on? Kind of music you're into, and
I guess when I was like a very like small child, I don't know. I think probably like by influence of like my older brother, I just liked a lot of like fucking like Crywank, so like loads of like tacky new metal, like Slipknot and Korn and stuff like that. Definitely like some stuff that I still have a bit of a soft spot for. And then I think maybe around like the age of like 13 or 14, I think just from like being like a fucking like millennial kid and like spending like all my time at home on the internet, just scrolling through Last FM and stuff. I kind of started getting into different styles of music, like a lot of the kind of like noise rock and like drone orientated stuff that I was kind of known for when I first started doing the singing box. Because I was like really into bands like Boris, for instance, when I was like 14. That was probably one of the first shows I went to. That was, not just at like the Academy or like a major event. And it was Emma from Fat Out who you interviewed recently who put that on. I
yeah,
remember,
Boris, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I remember they were like my favorite band ever when I was about 14 years old. And obviously that gig was like 18 plus, and I was like kind of too young to like be actively involved with like the DIY gig circuit or anything like that. I just fucking loved them at the time. And I was just kind of like nervously like wearing like a hoodie over my school uniform and stuff, hoping I could sneak into the Islington Mill and just go and like watch those shows. And luckily I was able to. But yeah, I think around that age, I just got into like a lot of heavier music. I also found a lot of the music I was listening to at that time because I used to be an active poster on the Slipknot forums, which
Oh,
don't
really?
exist anymore. But because I was just into like loads of tacky new metal, I was quite an active poster on there. And I stayed there for years really because I just like made like loads of friends like online, and I think it got to a point where like we'd all like kind of grown up and Slipknot weren't our favorite band anymore. But obviously there was like kind of like an online community that built up over the years. So I don't know. I think that's where I got into stuff like that and a lot of like edgy black metal and stuff like that. But
How
I
do
like
how
to
do
take
you
my pace
how
and
do you feel
explore
about
stuff like that.
Slipknot now? When you think back,
Um, I definitely prefer them to some other bands of like that caliber. They're just like really nostalgic, if anything, and I don't know. It's just like quite fun, like fast-paced music. Obviously, you can't take it too seriously because it's so angsty, but it's really fun to like listen to that stuff and like relive the age of like being 13. And I don't know, it's just like quite chaotic and just like really scary. I have a lot of soft spot. I have a massive soft spot for a lot of stuff like that, really.
yeah, I had a similar thing. I was into like a lot of new metal when I was a teenager, like Limp
Yeah,
Bizkit, Linkin Park, um, as Offspring, and then Korn. Obviously, Korn was like a huge influence for me. But I think at that age, you just like it's just pure like everything is just intense. Like your life, your friends, your partners, your everything is intense. So kind of reflects in what you listen to. You talked about the first kind of show that you went to that you recall was like Boris. And Boris, how would you describe Boris? And tell me, for
Um,
people who don't know who Boris are.
well, they're a Japanese three-piece who mostly started out doing sort of like drone and like stoner rock and like sludge metal. But I mean, they have like a very like long, expansive career. They've probably been going for about 20 something years now, maybe like pushing 30 years to be honest. And they've also kind of like just heavily experimented over those years, just releasing straight up what's like really like poppy, charty sounding music and like really sugary electronic stuff. Um, Kind of wish there was like more bands who like felt as open as them to just like take their music in a completely different directions. And when I got into them when I was like 14 years old, I think I was just really fascinated by the fact that they just like didn't like structure themselves to the same thing and like record like the same sounding album over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. I did an episode with a guy called Rio Taro. He's in a band called Loop Rider, and he's
Oh
kind
yeah,
of he's based in Japan, and he knows Boris quite well, and they were a huge influence for his
yeah,
band, Loop
yeah.
Rider and
Boris had a
stuff.
tune called Loop Rider. To be fair, so I don't know.
That was it. That was the name. That's where it came from. Yeah, he mentioned that. So, what was some other kind of big kind of inspirations or influences for you, like in terms of getting into the kind of DIY kind of subculture and underground music? What other bands were like that influenced you and kind of like inspired you to really get into the scene? And
Well, I can't think of like any acts as such. I think it was just like more the the culture surrounding the DIY gig circuit. Because that first show I ever properly put on by myself, I was doing like a BTEC in fucking music performance at the time, and we just had to like undergo some kind of independent project. So I decided I was just gonna put a gig on, and I just booked a bunch of mates and a bunch of people I'd seen recently at the time, um, just for the sake of getting a mark, really. Um, but it went really well, and it was good fun, and I think by that point I was going to like a lot of shows like that Emma from Fat Art was doing at Leeds Mill, a lot of Edwin's Very Bond nights at Fuel, and I don't know, just like very small independent gigs all around Manchester, and it always seemed like very like welcoming and something like anyone was capable of doing. So I think it's just more the existence of the kind of like DIY culture and everyone like lending each other a hand. It just made it always seem like something that was very feasible and like I could do this. It's very
yeah,
accessible.
yeah, I think that's something that's kind of it's kind of a something that has never really gone away through each generation. The DIY kind of mentality, going all the way back to kind of like the DC punk of like the sort of 80s, you know, with like Ian MacKaye and Fugazi. You know, it's still a movement that is so important to each generation. You know, like, and as you say, we're all trying to work together and put gigs on and just get some awesome bands in and just have a great time. But it's like we do have to kind of support each other, because there's like, you know, there's not really any money in it, is there? So we've got to try and help each other out somehow. And you know,
I don't think
oh,
it would
I need a
be
drum kit, you know, whatever. Just I've got a kit in my basement. I'll bring that and whatever, and just that's what I love about it as well. Yeah, that's something my kind of experience as well. But, so your first show, you said, yeah, it was November 2015 at the infamous Fuel Cafe bar in Withington, Manchester.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of cool kind of underground kind of I say underground or DIY kind of gigs that have gone on there. And so on the bill you had Shit Lips, Locean, and Rosalie 23. How did it go then? How did you feel about your first kind of venture into putting gigs on?
Well, when I did that event, I think it probably helped that there was around 6 or 7 acts playing on it, and obviously things like Facebook attendance aren't something you can like massively refer to. But I think even like before it happened, like I knew like that one was probably going to be quite a busy show because obviously like Fuel only holds like probably between 50 and 80 people, and there was like way more than twice that. attending digitally, and yeah, when it happened, it was like a really good turnout. And obviously, like a lot of my friends came and just seemed to like praise the event and said that I'd like done a really good job and stuff. And but at that point, I was at a stage where I was like just making all my shows free entry and just relying on donations to pay everyone.
Yeah.
And even so, it managed to work out quite well. Pretty much managed to like get enough money without me like really getting out of pocket to pay everyone. Lots of people came down, really enjoyed it. Well, as I said, I initially only did that one as like just some like random college project. But after it like went quite well, I kind of decided that like maybe it was something I had a bit of a knack for doing and could carry on.
Yeah. Which venues would you say were kind of instrumental for you early on, where you were putting gigs on, apart from Fuel Bar?
Well, Fuel's where I've posted 90% of my gigs, especially in Manchester. But in terms of getting into doing and promoting, yeah, Fuel and Islington Mill are probably the two main places, to be honest. I'd say they're largely where a lot of like the more interesting stuff in the Manchester music scene, like what's happening at the time. Obviously, the Islington Mill's not a venue anymore. But I'd say like mainly those two spaces.
Yeah, and you did put a gig on at Star and Garter.
Oh yeah.
And that tends to be a good space for like touring bands because a bit more. You know, it's a much bigger room, and you can fit a lot of people in there. And what about when you put the gig on there? How did that go? And that was quite a big show.
Yeah, that was Cocaine Piss. So I guess for anyone who doesn't know them, they're just like a punk band from Belgium, who I guess have been like gaining like some momentum in the past year or two. Steve Albini produced the record they recorded just before the tour that I booked them for. So I think obviously they gained quite a bit of press from that. And I'd initially like booked them to play at Fuel because they were really late with organising their tour, and it was only done like a week in advance. But after like selling like so many tickets within 10 minutes of putting them on sale, it was just obvious that Fuel was going to be way too small to accommodate them.
Yeah.
So that's why I moved it to the Star and Garter. Yeah, it's a great venue to be honest, especially for like someone who has like this sort of like DIY ethos that I do, because it's quite affordable to hire out, and like the bar's like very cheap as well.
Yeah.
You can get like two tinnies for a fiver.
Nice.
Whereas if I don't know, I'd hate to like consistently be like putting on gigs somewhere where like everyone who comes to my shows like can't afford to get drunk, because that'd just be fucking rubbish.
Yeah. In terms of the, this is something I noticed with these like underground like noise rock and post punk bands, the names they pick, I always find they're kind of overlooked. But like like Shit Lips, Crywank, Cocaine Piss, the Garden Centre, Territorial Gobbing, Fuckboy, Unpaid Intern. Do you think band names are overlooked? So I do. I really like.
I don't know. I think when someone does have like a really strong name, I think people take quite a lot of notice for it. For instance, I mean, we haven't actually like played any gigs yet. I don't know if we ever will, but me and a few friends are involved in this like industrial like noise improv collective called Gout, which like my flatmate came up with. And anytime we mention it to people, people seem just interested on like booking us from like the name alone. I guess it's just a pretty cool disease. Cool band name.
Emma's got a project
Yeah,
called
yeah.
Speed You Peter Andre, which I think is probably the best band name I've ever heard. But yeah, there was a place I used to rehearse at, and there was a poster, and I think it was like metal bands or something, and they were called like Horse Bastard, Swine Lord,
Yeah.
Livestock Jihad, Bong Ripper, and I just like for me, things like that just stick in my memory. Usually like metal bands and stuff, and like maybe some noise bands, and
Yeah,
but I love that part of creating a band, the band name. Um,
yeah, yeah. I
what
think
about the? Sorry, go on.
again, I guess having a strong band name does you some favors. But then again, it definitely helps with like a strong name. But I also think to some extent it is irrelevant, even if you have like quite a rubbish band name, for instance. Like if I was to be talking to some kids outside like a venue like Fuel, and they said they played in a band, and I was like, oh, what are you called? And they said something like, oh, we're called Sonic Youth. I'd think, oh, that's a terrible name. Like I'm never gonna book you. But obviously, like that's like a band who's like had a huge influence and span like loads of decades. But I think when you
Yeah,
like take a name like that, just at the surface value, and like don't take all the associations with it, it sounds quite tacky. So I think to
yeah.
some extent it's irrelevant because people just get to know you over your legacy and like what you've done. But also like stupid band names are pretty good. I like them.
So when say someone wants to, needs a gig or something, and they approach you, what's your kind of process? Do you usually just like check out the Bandcamp and be like, oh, this sound all right, or is it just kind of
Um,
word of mouth? Or
Pretty much. I mean, it's definitely been at a point for quite a few years where I've ended up booking gigs because like bands have got in touch with me. So I mean, yeah, a lot of it is just like listening to like the Bandcamp and seeing how it sounds. But obviously, it is a word of mouth thing. So someone I've previously put on like usually like recommends me, and then I know there's probably like some like similar interest there. So it kind of just goes very organically like that.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I wanted to ask you about with the current state. How do you see the underground music scene in Manchester currently with the pandemic? Pandemic aside, and which other like promoters and venues do you think have been important or are important to the scene in Manchester? Um,
Um,
Obviously Emma we've mentioned from Fat Out. Really,
yeah, definitely my friend Callum as well. Do your best. Who I think Mocha, who did that recent interview with me, who I know you're familiar with, have spoken to as well. He moved to Manchester with his band Poser about 2 years ago, and we kind of started collaborating on shows together. And he's the guy I was going to be running my stage at Sound from the Other City with, so we co-curated that lineup together. Um, it's hard to remember like who recently formed, like just because the pandemic's been going on for so fucking long now. But there were so many exciting things happening. And it seemed like everyone was just really taken off before it all just got delayed by this
yeah,
virus.
yeah. I mean, how have you kind of managed to keep things going? Or you tried? I know that you did do like a stream, a
Yeah,
gig,
yeah,
like a stream gig, but
yeah.
it's
We
not
did
really
a
something you've pursued further.
yeah. We did one live stream gig last year around the start of lockdown, which went amazingly. We were attempting to raise money for Manchester Central Food Bank, set a target of £100, thinking that was quite ambitious. And we actually ended up raising like nearly 600 in the end,
It's great.
which was an amazing feat, really. I haven't really thought about doing anything more in terms of digital shows, to be honest, because I think it's getting to a point where even though people are stuck at home again, that like people are just less motivated to go and watch that kind of thing. I think everyone just wants to get back into
Yeah,
the
I
real
don't think you
world,
can.
start doing music again.
I don't think you can replicate the live experience in any other platform other than the actual, you know,
Yeah,
gig itself. Because that's the whole kind of point of it is when you're at the gig, it's like the energy of being there, the other people, um, being quite close to the band, and it's just like there's just nothing that you can really do to replicate that. So yeah, I think we're all just like desperate to get through this and get some gigs going again. And I wanted to ask you about the Leeds underground DIY scene. Like from what I know, there's been a lot of really awesome like underground bands that have come out of Leeds, like Bilge Pump, Cowtown, that fucking Tank, obviously Beige Palace that you've put on a few times, and the venues you mentioned, was it Chunk, and then there's also the Brudenell Social.
Brudenell Social Club to an extent. There's Wharf Chambers as well. That was
Wharf Chambers,
probably
yeah.
the other one I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, how do you see what they've done and how they've sort of produced such a thriving kind of underground DIY scene? How do you see, how does it compare to Manchester, and what do you think, they've done so well to make it what it
Well,
is?
I think having spaces like Chunk and Wharf Chambers is a massive help. Um, but I also think part of the reason like those places exist is I mean, I guess it might be just to do with the fact that Leeds is like a pretty different like infrastructure, and like it's a much smaller city, and rent prices are probably cheaper, so it's actually much easier to like create these spaces and sustain them in the first place.
Hmm.
Because we were trying to like do something similar and like establish a space like that in Manchester for quite a while before lockdown, and it's just like a very like lengthy and tedious process. Like I don't think like they managed to like secure like the spaces like they have in Leeds in a day. We spent like
Yeah.
the better part of a year like booking viewings and like trying to like negotiate with landlords and stuff. And like try and create something with like a similar feel in Manchester. You know, a
So
venue, with practice
which
rooms.
places did you approach, like,
Um,
potentially?
just sort of like random warehouse spaces and abandoned spaces wherever we could find. A lot of them were like kind of like like around the outskirts of like Salford city centre. You know, towards like where places like the White Hotel and like where the bunker used to be. Because like they're still in like relatively close proximity to like the city centre, so like they're quite accessible whilst not
Yeah.
having like, any neighbours and stuff. But as soon as you book a viewing and ask like how much the rent is, like the landlord says like what's your budget, and we don't necessarily like strictly have one. Like we're trying to like hustle our way into like having these places for as cheap as possible. I mean that
Yeah.
wasn't really
Yeah.
my department, to be honest. I have no fucking idea about renting property. There were some people
Yeah.
involved with our team who were a bit more experienced with that, but I would say that is like maybe an advantage that Leeds have. Just having spaces like that, I think it just like creates like the space and opportunity for people to like form like their own projects. It just happens a lot more organically when you presented with these opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
we can create something like that in Manchester.
The thing with the Brudenell, like, I've been to a few gigs there. It's like a working men's club type
Yeah,
place that you wouldn't expect to see kind of that kind of music there, but it's just become that. And now they've got a proper like, rigged out stage and everything, and like loads of touring bands play there. And
yeah.
but yeah, that's in terms of your music promotion, the singing box. What's the thinking behind the name? What was the?
Oh, well, to be honest, I kind of just like chose it pretty quickly because I decided I needed something to do it as like an actual like promotions company. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a really big fan of Animal Collective, so it's just the title of like one of their songs, and I just
Oh,
nixed it
great.
and used it for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love Animal Collective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I mean,
tune off their second album, like Dance Manatee, when they were still doing like really weird, like noisy, like weird, screechy tribal stuff. They just got a tune on that called In the Singing Box, so I just nicked it from that.
oh, cool. Would you be like up for putting them on if you get to that level,
Uh,
getting out, start a booking agent for Animal Collective, and
yeah, I guess that'd be nice. I'd, I don't know. It's never been like my ambition to like be a promoter of that level explicitly, because like what I really enjoy doing is just sort of like rowdy shows and like tiny venues.
yeah,
Um, I suppose if I develop the skills to be like a booking agent for like a medium-sized venue or something, then I probably would do that to pay rent and bills and stuff. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still want to like subsidize that just to like do shit like put on shows and like tiny venues and in like living rooms and squats and stuff like that. Because
yeah.
that's what's actually enjoyable, like not just like massive venues that hold like hundreds or like thousands of people.
Yeah, I used to go to a lot of house gigs. There was one, Anson Road. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was like to do
No,
with
I'm not sure.
Golden Lab Records,
Yeah.
who they were around for a while, like one of the main kind of um, record labels in Manchester, and yeah, there was a lot of really cool house gigs. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's the spontaneity of it, and like being in that really intimate space. So I mean, we talked a little bit about you did a live stream, but I mean, what are your kind of plans post pandemic? Just carry on putting gigs on and
I guess so. As you might know, I was meant to be running a stage at Sound from the Other City in 2020, and that got postponed to this year, and obviously didn't happen then either. But I'd like to hope whenever it can actually go ahead, I'll be able to do that. Because that would have been like by far like the biggest thing I've worked on so far since
yeah, definitely,
I've been
definitely.
doing this. Um, I guess that was like my only concrete plan. Obviously, like when venues reopen, like they will have been struggling, so I'd kind of like to do what I can just to like throw any like fundraising events for like places like the Pier Hat and the Star and Garter, where I've been like proactive in organising events for so long. Um, Other than that, I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to plan out events when like they've just not existed for so long.
Did you already have your lineup sorted for the stage at Sounds from Liberty?
Yeah, we did. I'll have to try and remember who we booked now. It was all just friends bands, really. I think. Callum booked this guy called Michael Kuhn, if you know him. He's just sort of like a solo drummer, but he attaches like loads of pedals and contact mics to his drum kit, and it just makes it sound like absolutely nuts. It does like sort of quite interesting, like hardcore and like industrial glitchy stuff. Um, Cumin, which is a post-punk band with like ex-members of like Duds and stuff, who you maybe might have caught around Manchester.
Yeah.
The Yosarians, who are like obviously like quite a prominent band in Manchester for years, who you've probably seen. Um, I can't quite remember who the other three are off the top of my head, to be honest, because it's been about a year and a half now.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it had to be postponed, and
Yeah,
there was obviously they're kind of running out of funding sources because it's like is it pretty much 2 years now that they've not had a festival,
yeah,
so um, yeah, I was like threw a bit of donation in there to that festival. Sounds from the Other City, which is like a Salford-based annual music festival for people who don't know. Um, I've been to a couple, and they're so just a lot of fun, and mostly I'd say mostly like alternative bands and underground bands and stuff. So wanting to ask you, I don't know if you've this is just a kind of um, I guess joke question, but just because of the band name, I don't know if you've heard of a band called Dana Anna Aykroyd. Dana
uh,
Anna Aykroyd.
yeah. I've heard of them. I've never really listened to them, but definitely in like my younger years when I was like more into sort of like math rock and post-hardcore orientated stuff. The name like definitely like went went into my head a few times, but I don't think I ever specifically gave them a listen. I've not really seen any Dan Aykroyd films either, apart from one Christmas I had to when I was forced to watch Trading Places with some family members. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's just a Dan Aykroyd film. It's a bit like Freaky Friday, where he like swaps bodies with some like banker guy. I think Adam Sandler might be in it as well. it's fucking horrible, to be honest. I just remember
Yeah.
watching it with my family one Christmas when I was about 19 years old and wishing I was dead. I don't really recommend it.
That's yeah. I mean, that's it. It's a play on the guy, isn't it? The band
Yeah,
name is Dan Aykroyd, but yeah, they were like a Scottish six-piece self-dubbed fight pop band formed in 2006 in Glasgow, Scotland, but they broke up in around 2011.
yeah,
But yeah, they played quite a lot of shows in Manchester and stuff, and they're a lot of fun. I think they had two drummers as well.
yeah,
Two drummers, which is I always love being a drummer myself. Seeing Melvins at all tomorrow's parties.
yeah,
That was a great experience. Two drummers and
yeah. That's something.
Radiohead when they toured as well. They toured with a second drummer and beefed up, and that was amazing.
Yeah, I play drums as well. It'd be cool to be involved with something with like extra percussion, so it's not just me.
Yeah, yeah. Have you checked out any of the like Boredoms and that as well? The
Yeah, yeah.
huge
I've listened
projects
to
they.
quite a few of their records on Spotify and stuff. I've never like taken the time to properly delve into them. They did like one or two splits with Boris when like they started out, and I've heard them quite a lot just on like compilations of like random Japanese bands and stuff like that as
Yeah,
well. They are
yeah.
fucking great, but I couldn't name like a single record. I don't think.
They've put some huge, like massive, like projects on like 70 odd drummers or something in some park in Brooklyn or something,
Yeah.
and it just sounds fucking epic. But yeah, there's one question that I always have asked all my guests so far. In your opinion, what do you consider is selling out?
Um, I don't know, to be honest. Because I know when you asked like Emma this question, you kind of phrase it as whether you thought it was like wrong for her to like profit from like what she does or
Yeah, I've
whatever.
rephrased it now. Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think it's important to at least like make like some money from like what you do, like if you're like working in like music or like arts and like stuff like that. Because if I didn't think it was like a valid career, then I wouldn't have been doing this for so long. Obviously, what I do take issue with is people who like do just see like music promotion as like just like a fucking business and like nothing else. Because there definitely is a fair few people who I've encountered, like who I know in Manchester, who like do exactly that. I mean, I won't name them, but just people who like
no,
book bands and like ask punters who they've come to see on the door and like make a fucking tally to like determine like how much they're gonna pay each band, like depending on like the numbers like that they bring in and stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah,
like financially exploit like 16-year-old kids who are like just starting bands and stuff. It's just like really fucking lame. Like they see themselves as like almost like these like A&R like scout type people, and like think they're like doing like amazing amounts of good for like the music scene when actually they're just like ripping people off and putting on not very good bands. It's rubbish.
yeah. There was a guy I can't remember his name, but he was like fairly big on the Manchester music scene, and he was like notoriously dodgy kind of guy, pay to play kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But he'd convince you that you're playing on a huge bill and you're gonna go places and all that. And but then he was taking a big brown envelope at the end, and yeah, he was people got to know him as he had like a really kind of wet handshake as well, and he was just a proper. But there's loads of people like that, yeah, in the industry, and but like with the way I phrased it with Emma, it was like, yeah, it's kind of like where do you kind of draw the line? If like a big company were to come along and say, I've got this sponsorship deal, you'll have to release all your episodes under the name, but we'll pay you this amount of money. But you're like, I haven't got a job, I can't pay
yeah.
the bills, But at the same time, I'm like, am I selling out by, signing on the dotted line?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of an example that would be like applicable to like what I do really. But if I was offered like a fair amount of money that I could actually cover like my bills and rent, I probably would just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to one last question. Three bands or artists right now that you would recommend people should check out, like Manchester based, any UK based, whatever. But free.
I'd just say like three Manchester ones, like very quickly. Poser, POSA. That's Callum's in that band. Do Your Best, who I organise a lot of my shows with. Handle, that's like a three-piece no wave band with two ex-members of Duds and my mate Leo. I really like what they do because it's just so minimalist. It's just drums, bass, and keys. There's like no fucking electric guitar or any of that nonsense. But it just still sounds like so full and energetic. And for a third band, I don't know what to say. I'll just mention Sonny Bliss, who are part of that Baby Six collective.
Sonny Bliss, yeah.
More like industrial, like kind of like sax drum and stuff.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Brandon, for coming on. And
no worries, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and let's hope things can settle down soon. We get some gigs going. Let's get this scene pumping again, underground scene and all that.
Yeah, sweet, man.
All right, cheers, man. Take care.
Take it easy. Bye.
See you, man. Bye. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Can I ask that you like and subscribe to my channel? And you can also find me on facebook.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway, Instagram.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway, Twitter.com/TSWDA, and I'm also on Patreon if you want to support the podcast. It's patreon.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway. If you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could I ask that you leave a review under the tab ratings and reviews. That will massively help push my podcast up in the search results. I just want to say thanks to my guest Brandom Smith. You can find him on Facebook under Singing Box Promotions. That's facebook.com/Singing Box Promotions. And he's also on Instagram, instagram.com/Singing Box Promotions. Next up on the show is a guy called Barney Wakefield. He's an influential musician and promoter based around the DIY music scene in Brighton. I know Barney from way back when he used to tour with his band Epideme. He's also mutual friends of the guys from one of my favourite bands, Charlottefield, who were also based in Brighton. His current project's called Lower Slaughter, and in their own words, Lower Slaughter, DIY culture and its ability to bridge a band based at opposite ends of Britain. Formed in Brighton, but with a singer driven to Scotland by Brexit, the foursome can still make heavy party music. If you want to check them out, they're on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Lower Slaughter, all one word. They're also on Bandcamp, lowerslaughter.bandcamp.com. I've also got two more confirmed guests coming on the show. Don McLean of Fortissimo Records and his band Action Beat. You might have heard Don's name come up in one of my previous episodes with Emma from Fat Out. Don was an influential figure on the MK Don's DIY scene in the early noughties through his label Fortissimo Records, and so he's going to be coming on with his band Action Beat. It's going to be the first band style interview that I'm going to be doing, so let's see how that goes. Another guest confirmed to come on the show is Ian Martin. He runs a record label called Call and Response. He's based in Japan. In his own words, stupid fucking childish noise since 2005, comprising new music releases, live events and DJ parties. Call and Response Records is a Tokyo-based label specializing in post-punk, new wave and indie music from the Japanese underground music scene. The label started in 2005 and has released a number of albums and EPs, compilation albums and smaller DIY projects. We organise the regular Call and Response Indie Disco and annual Koenji Pop Festival events in and around the Tokyo suburb of Koenji, as well as various other events in Tokyo and around Japan. Call and Response is also associated with the Japanese music blog Clear and Refreshing, which features reviews and articles on a broader range of Japanese pop, indie and underground music. You can also keep up with Call and Response on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Call and Response Tokyo, all one word. And Twitter, twitter.com/CAR Records. That's twitter.com/CAR Records. Ian is also a mutual friend of Dave McMahon and Ryotaro Aoki, who's two of my previous guests, so they're all kind of part of the same underground scene in Tokyo, so I'm really looking forward to that one. My other confirmed guest is a guy called Dan Thomas. He was a big part of the Wigan Music Collective. He did a lot of the gig reviews. He was also in a band called Corinthians, and now his current project, Total Victory. Lastly, I just wanted to share some plans that I've got for the podcast post-pandemic. I'm going to be doing some location-style recordings, going to some gigs and shows and concerts, and finding some bands that I can interview. So watch this space. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. I'm your host, Rick Walland, and you were listening to The Scene Was Dead Anyway.